Now, Guinea's junta is expected to face more pressure to set a time frame for new elections as military rulers begin a 4-day series of meetings about the West African nation's future following the coup just over a week ago. Concerns are growing about how quickly the military rulers, led by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, will give up power to a civilian-led transitional government as called for by regional mediators and the international community. The coup has been cautiously welcomed by other long-time opponents of deposed President Alpha Conde, including Guinea's most prominent opposition figure, Chello Dalein Diallo, who lost to the ousted leader in the last 3 presidential elections. Among those taking part in the meetings are officials from Mr. Diallo's party and other critics of Mr. Conde, along with leaders from Guinea's mining industry, whom the junta leader has sought to reassure in a bid to prevent the destabilization of critical bauxite and gold exports that hold up the country's economy. Well, for more on this, I'm joined from London by the African Affairs analyst and publisher of Africa Briefing, Jon Offei Ansah. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Jon. They say they want to build a consensus. How are they planning to do that? I understand there are an extraordinary number of meetings going on over the next 4 days, so quite comprehensive, really.
Yes, I mean, how are they planning to do that? By talking to all the stakeholders, in the country, both the political and economic stakeholders, and they've already met the religious leaders, who are also a big, important demographic in the country. So I believe that they set, the things in motion, to achieve, the aims of their coup d'etat.
Well, I mean, it strikes one that the military leaders behind this coup need some form of legitimacy. I mean, this is a group, this was a group within the armed forces that took over, which puts them in a relatively vulnerable position at a guess. So presumably they need to get quite a lot of other people on board to strengthen their hand.
Exactly. I think that is the plan, and that is what you set about doing by talking to the religious leaders, talking to the opposition, talking to the business leaders, economic actors in the country, and so on and so forth. So they set, the plan in motion, and you see, people are impatient. That they just cannot. They've already promised to form a government of national unity. They call it a government of the national union, right? And these things cannot be rushed. So I think they are trying to make a very painstaking effort to achieve the goals of establishing that government of a national union. I believe that, again, they want to sort of have a very broad-based, government to pave the way, possibly for a return to civilian democratic dispensation.
Yes, I mean, but they're not giving much away on how long they'll take to move the country forward and return to that civilian rule that you're talking about. I mean, and clearly there is substantial pressure on the military from groups like ECOWAS and the African Union.
Yes, there's pressure, but I believe that they should not, the ECOWAS African Union should not put too much undue pressure on this junta. Okay, they should give them time. I believe that they have, from what they've been saying, the junta leader, Mamadou, I can't be saying, I believe they had good intentions, right? If they didn't, they wouldn't start the kind of consultations they've begun today, talking to the politicians, the civilian politicians, talking to the religious leaders, talking to the economic actors, the business leaders. If they didn't have good intention, from where they wouldn't have done that. So I believe they want to get all shades of opinion, political, economic, social, business opinion, on board, right, to move things forward. So yes, there's pressure, but the pressure mustn't be too
On the other hand, of course, for those of us who are fairly skeptical, I mean, we've seen these sorts of things in different countries where they become diversionary tactics. I mean, we've seen military governments holding sovereign national conferences and all kinds of things, and in the end, they find an excuse to extend their stay. So, for all those who are skeptical about Colonel Doumbouya and his intentions, I mean, they would need to see something quite concrete very soon. For example, a time scale for when the military will hand over to civilians.
Yes, you are right. I mean, there's been so many instances of soldiers, taking power, promising, everything, the heaven and the moon, and again, later on, we see them morphing into civilian leaders and perpetuating themselves in power. There's many instances of that, not only in West Africa, but in Africa as a whole. But for the time being, I believe that we should give this juncture, from what the Colonel has been saying, I believe the AU, the ECOWAS, must give them the benefit of the doubt. And look, we have only last this year, we saw what happened in Mali when there were coup d'etats. They promised a return to civil rule. The OU, the ECOWAS lifted the sanctions on them. And then about a few months ago, there was a coup, and then things happened. But yes, but that is a precedent. That's an example. But I believe that this must be given the benefit of the doubt and see how far they move, how credible they will become.
Right. Now, one of the unanswered questions is what will happen to the ousted President Alpha Conde. I mean, there are calls for him to be released, but we understand that he's refused to sign anything saying he's resigned as president. I mean, do you think the army are concerned that if he's released, he might try to get back into power, which is why they're keeping him locked up? And we've got about 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Because the man still has a lot of support in the country. And since he's refused to sign the letter of resignation, right? I mean, chances are, if he's released, he might galvanize his supporters, and that could plunge the country into chaos. So the military, the junta are rather being cautious in keeping him locked up.
Yes. Okay. Jon Offei Ansah, the African Affairs Analyst and publisher of Africa Briefing, thank you very much indeed.